Panel on the 8th of December 2022. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. I'm the chair of the panel and my name is Annalise Tour. Joining me today via video conference are Kevin Hoffman and Jason Perica as expert members, and the community representative is Michelle Finnegan. The panel has individually undertaken inspections of all items on today's public and electronic agendas. The inspections have been taken either from the street and surrounding area or electronically. We have been provided with an assessment report prepared by council staff who have also briefed the panel on each of the applications. Today, we have a number of people registered to address the panel. The order of the speakers for each item will be firstly councillors, followed by objectors, and then those supporting the application, including the applicant or their representatives. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. Any extension of time will be at my discretion as chair. The panel has been provided with copies of all the submissions received in response to the public exhibition of the application and forwarded a copy of late correspondence. Therefore, there is no need for speakers to repeat all the points made in those submissions or by previous speakers. Please focus on the key points you wish us to understand and consider. The applicant may wish to address issues raised in Council's report, including any response to conditions and any issues raised by an objector. We may ask questions of the speakers to clarify our understandings of what is being said. We expect that each speaker will be heard in silence while they are addressing the panel, and that courtesy and respect will be observed throughout this teleconference. I ask that everyone mutes their microphone unless they are called on to speak, noting that we have the ability to mute all attendees or individuals. After hearing from the speakers on all the items, the public meeting will be closed and the panel will then deliberate and make our decision. After hearing from the speakers on the minutes of the panel's decision, including our reasons, will be available on Council's website as soon as possible after the public meeting. You should be aware that the panel meetings are recorded and that the audio recordings will be uploaded to Council's website. Prior to the meeting, each panel member has been asked to advise whether they have a conflict of interest in relation to any item on today's agenda. Michelle Finnegan has declared a conflict in relation to item the DA in relation to 3 Monmouth Street. In relation to the electronic agenda, Michelle Finnegan has also declared has a conflict of interest in relation to 16 Little Street because she was a member of the panel that dealt with the original application, and in relation to the Ritz DA, I have a conflict as I was a member in relation to the original DA and therefore cannot deal with a review application. So other than those matters, there's no conflicts of interest that have been declared. Where there have been conflicts of interest declared, Michelle and I will not participate or have not participated in any of the discussion in relation to these matters and will not be involved in the determination of the matters. In relation to the item for the Ritz, as I'm stepping down from that matter, Jason Perica will be the chair of when that matter is being discussed and determined. So now let's get on to the actual items on the agenda. The first item is for 39 Dudley Street, Coogee, and we have Councillor Kathy Nielsen registered to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I acknowledge that the application as amended does address many of the heritage concerns and amenity issues previously raised in relation to this DA. And of course, I support 39 Dudley Street, Coogee being listed as an item of local heritage significance. However, I would like to suggest an added condition in relation to the front fence. You will note on page 33 of the business paper under the heading, changes within the front garden, and I quote, "It is proposed to widen the existing driveway by removing an existing retaining wall and constructing a new retaining wall. The area of soft landscaping within the front garden will be reduced, but it appears," and I'm quoting, "but it appears that no changes are proposed to the original front fence. The proposed changes will not significantly impact on the front garden setting of the heritage item. Would it be advisable to add a condition to ensure the retention of the original front fence?" And also, Chair, I noticed in the report, page 32 of the business paper, in the second last paragraph, and I quote, "It is also proposed to reinstate the shingles to the front bay window, which were previously removed." And I couldn't see any reference to this being a condition, but perhaps it's mentioned somewhere. But if not, I think it should be added as a condition. And the other skillful amendments that have been made in terms of height reduction and retention of views are very dependent on ground level or base level, etc. And is there a condition or conditions that can be imposed to ensure inspections at appropriate times during construction so as to ensure the desired results of view retention is achieved? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions from panel members?
Sorry, can I just ask one question, Kaz? I missed the second one. The first one was about the front fence. The third comment was about inspections. What was the second one? I'm sorry, I just missed that.
The second one was in relation to the shingles. Is that the one you mean?
Yeah, sorry, I might have missed it. What was the suggestion there?
Yeah, on page 32, when you see, you'll see that it's proposed to reinstate the shingles to the front bay window, which were previously removed. But I couldn't see any reference to this being a condition, and I just wanted to ensure that, well, I thought ensuring it as a condition will ensure that it happens. So
thanks, sorry, I just missed that. Thank you.
No, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. We now have an objector, Mr. Mark O'Connor. Is Mr. O'Connor there?
Yes, do you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
Yeah, my name's Mark O'Connor. Thanks very much for being able to express some community concerns. Just on a broad scale, for many years now, our local community sort of had a love affair with a group of 10 properties from 142A Brook Street right through to 37 Dudley Street, and they're a unique set of houses that all have very heritage-worthy qualities about them. They embody the history of the development of the Coogee area in the early part of the 20th century, and they also embody all of the history, character, style, and ambience and beauty of a bygone era. They're living relics that are available to our community to enjoy right now. And 39 Dudley Street is one of those living history books that our community can enjoy right now. It's a very important and a very valuable house in our community, and the community has loved and supported the retention of this and also a number of other buildings that are within the recently supported Edgecombe Estate Heritage Conservation Area, which is proposed under the Randwick Comprehensive Planning Panel proposal. Now, there's some community concerns over this DA that's been proposed over 39 Dudley Street. Concerns being that there's concerns that the heritage elements of the building, the effect on the streetscape, and the visual interaction with adjacent buildings and those included in the Edgecombe Estate Heritage Conservation Area. We're concerned that the changes that are proposed will impact on all those elements. No doubt the panel's got all of the community submissions available, so I won't go through them, of course. But a major theme amongst the community concerns appear to be the height and form of the new additional roof line and its appearance to the street that is not in keeping with the original heritage characteristics of the building or the adjacent buildings. As you know, and I've mentioned, 39 Dudley Street is a local heritage item of contributory status, as is 41 Dudley Street. which is adjacent to the building. So we as a community, we very much value the unique and irreplaceable heritage that we're fortunate to have around us, which is embodied in these buildings, with 39 Dudley Street being integral to that. The aesthetic ambience and beauty, the streetscape that it produces, and the overall heritage that is embodied in this building and others around it is unique, and we don't want that to be negatively impacted. I think I'm getting the point across there. The community is very much behind saving these buildings for now and for the future as they are. So we don't want to see any changes to negatively impact the heritage value on this building as an individual or as part of a collective in the heritage conservation area, which is hopefully going to be Edgecombe Estate. So what the community asks for in any decisions today that the panel might make is that the heritage character, style and beauty of this building will be maintained as in keeping with its original design, so that it is not to detract from itself, the buildings around it, or the ambience and beauty of the streetscape that the community so dearly values. We ask that the panel will honour the community's trust to protect the heritage value of this building, both individually and as part of a unique and valuable and irreplaceable group of buildings that make up the Edgecombe Estate Heritage Conservation Area. So they're the concerns that overall our community has, and that we really commend that to you to make sure that this building is protected both individually and collectively for its heritage values, and that no modifications that could detract for that will occur. Anyway, thanks very much for considering the community's concerns in this matter. I very much appreciate it.
Thank you. Any questions for panel members? No. Okay, so on behalf of the applicant, we have Ms. Miriam Kaleo, and I understand that there are also members of the design team available to answer questions. Ms. Kaleo, if you're there.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair and panel members. Yeah, our consultants are with us here if there is any question. So we would like to share a presentation with you. Just a second. Just to give you an idea of what has been the process and the evolution of the project to respect all parties. Sorry. Okay. So, as you know, this has been a long and frustrating process for us. We went in with good faith and compromised really at every turn to get things going. And yet, 14 months later, we are still without a decision while our project keeps shrinking over and over, as you can appreciate from this image. And meanwhile, we live in this beautiful 1920 house, but which has mold, humidity, lack of insulation, and insufficient space for our growing family of 5. So we really hope that with your help, this meeting will allow us to move on and make our family project a reality. This is what we wanted initially to achieve. Then we have been considerate of what could have been the neighbors' feeling and proactively pulled back our western section in order to increase their side views to the detriment of our living space. Then we discussed the plans with the neighbors, submitted the first DA, and actually received objections from the neighbor. We reached an agreement with our neighbors and submitted a revision in 21. We pulled back our living space, further again, removed a side blade, lowered the roof, added a privacy screen. So number 37 withdrew their objection as per our agreement. And then in April, finally, we discussed heritage with the council and agreed to reduce the bulk and increase the setback from the street. And in doing that, we lost about 2 meters. We shared these new plans with number 37, pointing out the views they recovered, which they recognized, but they didn't agree for us to regain a little bit of space at the western section. So we stayed on our previous agreement despite losing really a very large chunk of our living space. And our neighbor said our plans since April and raised no concern. So we submitted our updated plans in June, which was revision E. But it turns out that the neighbor submits objections. So now we had sacrificed plenty at a tiny space and now 2 sets of unexpected objections from 37. But in the spirit of moving on, we made further changes which detrimentally affected once again our space to meet the request in the objection. Once again, we were delayed and more expenses and ended up sitting lower with lower ceiling. And here we are with revision F. And we wanted to point out that this was as to preserve a side view from small lateral windows in a non-primary living space, which was designed and sold as a bedroom and teen retreat or studio in 2020. And also knowing that the extensive northeastern ocean and district views would have been maintained no matter what design. Wedding Cake Island is now maintained from the balcony, and pretty much all the standing ocean view will now be maintained from these minor windows. Also, you can appreciate that on the ground floor, the whole views towards the ocean will be largely retained by the neighbors, while we will have no water views from our family room at the ground floor because of the setback of the western section compared to east. And to conclude, heritage buildings can be respectfully changed to facilitate comfortable living. We understand the concerns of the community, but we believe that this scheme is really an acceptable response to meet the special requirement of a family of 5. As you can see, the proposed bulk is set back well away from the street as not to disturb the presentation of the house and streetscape. And we happily support the conditions of consent suggested by the council in relation to heritage, and also the first concerns that were raised about making sure the fence is maintained. And, you know, having the inspection, we have no trouble at all with that. So I would like to thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'll just see if the panel members have any questions of either you, or I understand you've got your heritage consultant and your architect available as well. So are there any questions from the panel members? Yes, Jason.
I had one just clarifying what you said at the end there about conditions that have been brought up by one of the submissions today. I think there were 3 about retaining the existing fence, reinstating shingles over the front awning, and well, inspections that might be regulated by the regulations. But are you saying you're happy with the condition that says retain the existing fence, and happy with the condition that says reinstate shingles above that front window? Right. Okay. And inspections, I'm assuming, will be covered by regulations in terms of certification.
No problem, absolutely.
That was the plan all along.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That's it. No more questions from me. I can see the changes have been done, and I think it's well managed in my view.
Any other questions? Kevin?
No questions, thanks.
Kevin, you've got a question?
Unmute me, please.
You're unmuted, it's fine.
Thank you. I think the shingles are from below the windowsill, aren't they? In the front elevation, they're not above. Yeah, it's a traditional treatment. In regard to the objection about the roof shape, I take it the roof shape is relatively flat now compared to the Federation pitched roof. So that concern of Mr. O'Connor couldn't really be achieved with a pitched roof and still give the view benefits to the next door neighbour. Is that your architects and your heritage experts' opinion?
Correct. So the roof pitch was started off at 5 degrees, which was quite low. Following consultation with council and heritage, we reduced that pitch down to 2. We then subsequently, another revision, also dropped the height of the new addition to further lower that roof. And then given the latest set of view analysis from the neighbour, we've further reduced the pitch to 1 degree to increase the lookout over that roof. So it really is the preservation of view shift, as well as reducing the overall visual impact of the new addition that has resulted in that flat roof and recessed form.
Okay. Thank you. That's my only questions.
All right, I think that's all. So thank you very much for attending in relation to that item. The next item is 3 Monmouth Street, Randwick. And as I said in my opening, Michelle will depart the meeting now. Just wait for Michelle to log off, disappear. Yeah. Okay, so we have objector Dr. Felicity Minogue.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. So you just want me to launch in? All good?
Yes, you've got 3
thanks.
minutes.
Look, thanks so much for the opportunity to speak today. I'm the immediate north neighbour of 3 Monmouth. I'm just going to make 3 objections, but they're summaries of what's more detailed in my submissions. First one is the balcony on the proposed rear development. I am concerned about the privacy issues for at least 5 neighbours because of this balcony. I think ideally this should be removed, I think, because it's apparently virtually unusable, but it conversely poses very significant loss of privacy for others. That's the first of my issues. The second one is really of most concern to me, and that's about a window W3. And if you can look at W3, it's a north-facing window from an upstairs bedroom. And from W3, there's very significant and I think unacceptable overlooking onto my outdoor and in fact in some of my indoor living spaces at both the ground and upper levels. So they've got full view of my deck, barbecue, back garden and some rear indoor living areas. I do have a render I can show you at some point if I can activate my my PowerPoint. Can you see if I can do that? Is that okay?
Yes, although in terms of the information that we've had before us, we have had photos and things.
Okay. Okay, and I have sent through the renders as well.
We've seen that.
Yeah, so we've seen
You've
it.
seen the renders, great, thank you very much. The W3 serves a bedroom and it's not a living space. It's got large glass windows and doors to the east and it's got plenty of light and ventilation. And basically the views from that window will be extensive and quite invasive for me. The window is not just a privacy issue though, it's what really concerns me as well is light spill from the window. So that the indoor area most affected by the light ingress is going to be the most personal and utilised areas of my indoor living space. So from a loss benefit equation point of view, the benefit of window W3 to the applicant is negligible really because they've got light and ventilation from the east windows, but the inclusion of the window for the occupants of number 1 is a dreadful outcome from a health and wellbeing perspective. Not only is there loss of privacy, there's a distressing spill of light into the most intimate living spaces and loss of those outdoor and indoor spaces that I most use for quiet enjoyment, and it's a profound negative impact on my life. And I think on any future residents of number 1. I would really love it if that window would be deleted, or at the very least made a highlight window with a high sill and fixed screening. The third point is a sort of a threefold submission. First one relates to the pebbles and water drainage. The pebbles pose a problem, I think, because they pose water runoff problems into my property. So my home's about 1 metre from the pebbled area and it's on the downside of the sloping sandstone ridge. There's also a cement block proposed for the middle part of those pebbles, which will basically act as a dam, and you'll have water build up and discharging into my property. So I suggest that perhaps we should just reinstate the concrete surfaces with, normal drainage rather than going to the bother of the pebbles, which will cause possibly mould and water damage to my property. From a personal point of view, I consider mould and water damage to be really enormous problems in the community and for everyone. And I've got a really dry house that I've managed to, create through a lot of work, and I'd really hate to lose that. The second prong of my third point is the fencing. It's been covered in the submission, so I won't go into that. But what I would like to stress, though, is if the recent landscaping I've had done, if it's damaged or destroyed in any way, I would request that a condition of consent be that any damage be replaced like for like, and that the landscaping company I used, Outdoor Establishments, who installed the garden 6 months ago, should be involved in the replacement. And the replacement of those structures, the fence, the garden, soft and hard landscaping, should occur immediately after the new fence is built and at the applicant's expense, of course. And the third final point was just I would be most appreciative of a dilapidation report for my home, and I think all neighbours would benefit from a dilapidation report.
Right,
thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Any questions from panel members? Yes, Jess.
Yeah, so I hear what you're saying. I've read your submissions. So with that W3, I understand your position is you prefer it to go because there's ample outlook from along the rear window and you don't see it as necessary or the net impacts outweigh the benefits. And your suggestion is either remove it or have a high sill, with your preference being remove it. Of the options of a high sill or moving that whole window, say 2 metres towards the street, so it isn't, past the rear alignment of your dwelling, which would you prefer out of if there still is to be a window in that elevation? I understand your position is you prefer there be none, but if there was to be one, out of having a high sill or moving that window further towards the street so it's not over the rear, which would you prefer?
The high sill or the moving it backwards? Oh.
I don't mean to on the spot.
I guess if it were moved
there's
back,
a privacy issue there. I'm just trying to work out, what the solution might be.
Yeah, I guess if it were moved backwards and there were fixed louvers facing, I think north. I think Ros suggested northwest. Is that right?
Right.
I think Ros was pretty on to how would be best. So I think, yes, if it were moved backwards towards the front of the house so that there was no overlooking of my yard, so it was behind my rear wall and that there were north-facing fixed louvers, I think that would be a good option.
And just on the other thing, again, this is just questions to understand the issue. So the pebbles on the side, I just want to understand what the existing situation is. Will the changes in your view make it better or worse than existing, and what your solution you're suggesting is?
Yeah, look, I think the pebbles, I think the pebbles are being placed. I think if we remember the topography of the ridge, it's a sandstone ridge. So there's not going to be a lot of water absorption and there's going to be a lot of water runoff. At the moment, there's just a concrete path like your traditional, side path in any suburban home. And with that path, there are, drainage. I think there's drainage. I assume there is. I think if you withdraw the pebbles and say that the surface itself is where the water drains into, I think that's a false assumption, because I think what you'll find is that the water pools on the surface of the sandstone after penetrating, say, the 5 centimetres or so of soil. Then when it's saturated, it will just flow into the southern side path of my home. And I think that southern side path will become really damp. And it's something I really don't want to happen.
Right.
That's what I think's happening. I don't know what you think is the...
and
I think the bottom line is probably leaving it concrete with proper drainage, that the proper stormwater drains where it channels into is probably a better option.
Right. And the fencing, and I've read the surveys and so on, but I'm just trying to understand what this issue is with the fencing. You're just saying it should be on the boundaries. Isn't this just a separate dividing fences issue, or what's the issue with the fencing?
I don't know that there is an issue. I've kind of abandoned that. I had fairly expensive landscaping done. And the only problem with the fence, I think, is the initial DA, which was consented, said there was no fencing to change, which is fine because I've just accepted that it's in the wrong spot and have put in very expensive landscaping. But it now appears, I think, from the DA that it is most likely that the excavation for the pool will see destruction of the plants and fence on my southern side. So all I would say is,
Application report and things, right? Okay.
is that clearer or?
Yeah, that is. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, yes.
I'm just interested in the window W3. It's a bedroom window, isn't it?
It is a bedroom window.
And you're worried about light spill. Well, one would think the lights in a bedroom are not going to throw a lot of light spill. They're just like a normal window in a house. Why are you so worried about light spill?
I think that it's a large window, 1.5 by 1.2, and I think to assume that everybody has dim lights in a bedroom, I think that's a fairly fraught assumption.
So you're not imagining a spotlight
I have no
or
control
something?
over it. Sorry, what was that?
You're not imagining a spotlight or something.
No. There
you
is
think
also
that just normal bedroom lighting would cause a problem.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So that's apart from the visual impact on my living area. There is also a floodlight, by the way, on that northeastern corner that will sit anterolaterally to my rear wall if it's replaced like for like now. But I think that
I saw that in your objection, yes. But I think that's a fairly simple condition to make sure, and it's a fairly standard condition, that spotlights need to be directed away from neighbours.
Yeah.
All right. Any further questions from panel members?
No, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next speaker we have is Catherine Hoggett.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so thanks for your time today. In addition to our objections, there are two things that we've submitted now, which we just wanted to address to the panel. And the first one was in relation to the overshadowing. So I really appreciated Roz coming out to understand the topography of the home in addition to the orientation. What was really evident to us living in the home is that the diagrams that were submitted were showing a current state of overshadowing that was inaccurate. So what we did, we went ahead and got some professional diagrams done ourselves at our expense, is how concerned we were about this issue. So I've submitted those to from Denim Designs. I'm just going to see if I can share my screen for you.
We have received them and we have looked at them, and Roz has.
Sorry, if you're speaking, Annalise, I can't hear you.
We've received your drawings, and they have been assessed by the consultant planner who wrote the assessment report. So you don't need to share them. We've got them. You've
got them? Okay. There was just one there that I wanted. I'll just bring up my screen if I can. No, it's not working. Okay, so
do you want to tell us which drawing you want us to look at?
Yeah, so it was the 10 a.m. diagram specifically that I wanted to bring your attention to. So that is really clear in showing that a current state of overshadowing from the current property is 0 because of the topography. Now that wasn't represented in the original application. So we just wanted to bring to your attention the difference in that. And why that's important is because it's just not demonstrating correctly the full extent of the impact to us. So from 10 a.m. onwards, there's significant overshadowing, which Roz has had to rely upon a guesstimate, given that it wasn't an hourly diagram, which is what we've now got, and that the overall outcome of loss of sunlight into our home is 85 to 90% on the 21st of June. And we just feel that that's an absolutely devastating loss, and that it cannot be attributed solely to the orientation of the homes, because naturally there would be a level of overshadowing at the moment if that wasn't available to them. So we just wanted to bring that to the attention and just put that onto what our original objection was. And in relation to that, there's also no conversation in any of this around the loss of or from the environmental impact that is on our home with this 85 to 90% loss of solar access in the middle of winter. So we renovated our home 3 years ago now, and it's got northern windows, as Roz has mentioned, all down the back of the home, significant access to natural heating and cooling. And this proposal just simply obliterates that. And I just think that's a fairly unfair outcome at the full gain of amenity for the applicants. We also included the equinox, and I know that doesn't relate to the DCP, but even at the equinox, you'll see, according to those diagrams, there still is significant overshadowing over our outdoor living areas throughout the course of the day. So in relation, the next one was
you are over time. So have you got much more to say, or do you need an extension?
Just in relation to privacy. Sorry,
Yeah.
I was just trying to get my screen up because I did want to send through some 3D renders that I had. And let me just see. Here we go. No, I'm really sorry. I can't bring it up.
That's all right.
So I've got 3D renders, and I'm happy to send these through. The loss of privacy, the full loss of privacy of the impact of the balcony. So Ros mentioned that that the external louvers that we have, that the balcony actually sits above that level. But in fact, the eye view is directly into the back part of our living area and outdoor areas. And so even though we noted that there's some provision for privacy, we again are just asking for that balcony to be removed. And also in relation to the study window, so that's been reverted in this new application to a full window, and again, provision's been provided. But if I could show you the 3D renders, the full view along our entire living area is just extreme. It's unfair. It is not unreasonable to ask for the fixed louvering to be facing the front part of the house of our home to completely negate that privacy, massive privacy impact. So yeah, that's the two additional things that I wanted to add.
All right, thank you. Any questions from panel members?
No.
Yes, Jason.
Thanks, Chair. Look, I guess I've seen the photos of your house. I can see whichever shadow diagrams you're relying on, I think it's pretty common ground that there'll be a very significant overshadowing impact upon the north-facing windows of your ground level rear living, dining, kitchen area. On the other hand, I guess it's a conservation area. Two-storey additions aren't uncommon, and proposal complies with height and FSR, and part of the heritage tension has been to try and push the massing more towards the rear to retain one story in the presentation of the street, and consequently that has some other impacts in terms of overshadowing and privacy and bulk distribution. But in a way, the way you've designed your house with north-facing windows close to a site boundary and close to a neighbouring property is going to mean the first floor addition is inevitably going to cause some overshadowing to your property. So I'm just trying to understand what you think the reasonable solution is. I mean, you've chosen a solution of orientation. Are you saying there should be no first floor addition? That there should
No,
be
absolutely not.
What's your solution?
I guess where our frustration has lied is from the reliance upon it being the orientation. Absolutely, we have maximised northern orientation. What I think this has demonstrated is that, and by no means am I saying don't develop the home. I think that what's concerning to me is if you read the report from the heritage planner, there was a specification initially in relation to the setback of the home from the street. This current design actually goes even further, and the comments that they've made is that it's barely visible from the street. So I really feel like that with this footprint that's available, what's from the street is now barely visible is fully impacting our home. And I ask that it would be moved forward at no loss of amenity for them, but in just, improving the availability of sunlight into our home, because
Right. So you're saying keep the first floor addition, move it closer to the street. By how much?
absolutely.
By how much are you saying move it?
Well,
As
you
much
know,
as possible.
as much as possible, because
right.
the more it gets moved forward, and I accept that we live in a heritage. I mean, we renovated ourselves, so I understand absolutely what's trying to be achieved. But if it's been moved even further back from what the heritage specification was, it's further back than number 1 Monmouth Street. There's absolutely room to move the exact same footprint if necessary, or more further towards the street.
Okay. Thank you. That's it from me.
All right, thank you. Any other questions?
I see that there's a shared screen come up. Does the objector want to just briefly explain that?
So these are the 3D renders. Sorry, I didn't realise that they'd come up finally. These are the 3D renders that we had done that will just give you a sense of the privacy impact. So this is our living area. These are the northern windows as it currently stands. And this is a person standing on the balcony, the proposed balcony. So you can see here that the eye level is literally straight into our living area. And here is the study, the southern study window as well, as it currently stands. So that is the first aspect, which, you know, I think is fairly clear, that asking for privacy measures for that is not unreasonable in any sense of the word. That's the view from the proposed balcony. So you can see the fence line, you can see where the louvers are. Again, I've got an 8-year-old daughter. As a mother, as a person, to have somebody to be able to walk out into that living space at any time of the day or night, to me, is just, it makes me feel sick in my stomach. And when I look at the proposed amenity for the applicants, which, you know, it's a small balcony, it's be rarely used. For us, I mean, that's minimal amenity. For us, this is 24-hour impact of having somebody potentially overlooking straight into our living area.
And that doesn't show the side screens that are recommended as a condition.
No, so this is the that doesn't show the screens. No. But if you imagine a person is 1.6 meters, this photo here does.
Right, but your concern's not laid with the recommendation.
And 1.8 was so the ROS put in 1.8, and then the heritage planner put in 2 meters.
So your concerns are laid or not allayed by having fixed side privacy screening to that rear?
I feel like, I mean, it's not like it's a 20-meter difference. It's literally 3 or 4 meters. You know, even with having it, they're not fully opaque. You can still see through them.
So what's the next one? What's the next render?
The final one here is the view from the study window.
Where's that?
You'll
have to move your cursor.
Yeah, because we haven't seen
them. That's from the proposed extension to you, as opposed to you from the extension.
This is from the proposed extension into us. Can you see that?
Yep.
So that's from the study, is it?
That's from the study, yeah.
And that's why you're saying 45-degree fixed louvers on that window, right?
That's right.
Yeah. And then the one before that, I don't think we saw that one either.
I didn't see that one. So there's that one. That's the view from the balcony.
Yeah.
Okay.
The view from our home up to the balcony in the study.
Assuming no side screening.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
I just don't feel that the amenity gained by having that balcony is an equitable outcome for the absolute 100% loss of privacy for us. It's very upsetting, very concerning.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
That's all right. The next speaker is Dirk Klaus.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Can I just emphasise not to repeat what the previous speakers have said?
No, and that's fine. Yeah. Thank you again for the opportunity to address the panel.
That's all right.
As I said before, the DA relies heavily and almost exclusively on meeting numerical guidelines whilst ignoring DCP and Land and Environment Court precedent. The issues concern mainly the first floor rear setback of the DA and the inclusion of the balcony. Now, one thing that's been ignored that I can see is a section of the DCP, section 3.3.3 in relation to rear setbacks, and that is specifically to address the several issues caused by the proposed DA, including those addressed by Catherine and Felicity. Now, this section specifically says that rear setbacks can be increased over and above the numerical guidelines if to meet the predominant rear setback, the need to achieve reasonable view sharing, and the need to adequately protect privacy and solar access. And if they are not met, then they must demonstrate why that is not required. And I do not believe that this DA has done so. The report prepared by Ms. Reid incorrectly advises that the rear setback complies with the DCP, but it only takes into consideration the ground floor setback. The current DCP, although it does not specifically state that this is how the calculation is made, the updated DCP dated 11th of November 2022 clarifies this, specifically stating that the calculation is achieved by looking at an average and by including each story separately. That is, the first floor rear setback must be assessed, not only the ground floor. And this is what was actually used in the DA for 6 Chepstow Street behind us back in 2018. This is a logical and intended approach. So the proposed rear setback, first floor setback, of number 3 does not comply with this DCP when considering the impact that it has on those things that's already been referred to. What we've asked for is just that the footprint of the first floor aligns with the footprint of number 1. And that would alleviate all of the issues that we have discussed. Now, unfortunately, the applicants have never approached us to discuss any of this. And this is the 3rd time the DA has been there. So, and that's very disappointing. I now provided you with a diagram which shows the comparative setbacks. So you can see that it doesn't comply. So even if the setback of number 3 were to comply with the same setback as number 1, in terms of averages, it still doesn't meet the DCP requirements. I'm very concerned that to allow a de facto rear setback creates a very unwelcome precedent in a historical conservation area. So now the big issue for me was the view sharing. Now you will see from the photos provided by Ms. Reid that I received panoramic views of the skyline of Bondi Junction. Okay, and these are obtained from my kitchen family room area. They meet 3 of the 4 tests under tenacity in terms of how the views are achieved. And these views are specifically mentioned in section 5.6 of the DCP, which acknowledges the value of such views. I do not agree with Ms. Reid's report that they have little value simply because they do not include iconic elements. That is not a requirement of the DCP. The views meet the description provided in the DCP. In the DCP, they include more than 70% of the Bondi Junction CBD, including the twin residential towers and most of the office towers. The lit views in the evening are even more significant and impressive. I do not believe, therefore, Ms. Reid's assessment accurately takes into consideration the objectives of the DCP. The red line drawn by Ms. Reid in her assessment indicates where the loss of views will occur. I do not believe this is accurate. I have stood on the roof of number 5 and been able to actually see where the building line will finish, including the balcony and how that relates to my north-facing windows, which obtain the views. And they obtained from a standing position, as I said, in my kitchen family room area. To say that I will be compensated because of the views from the upstairs bedroom is not, does not agree with the definitions obtained and considered in a tenacity, which basically says that the views from living areas are far more valuable than the views from bedroom areas. So I do not believe it's logical to say that I'm being compensated by virtue of the fact that I retain views from upstairs. So my views comply with 3 of the 4 tests of tenacity. The only test it doesn't comply with as regards to development is to the development of the side, but this is addressed by section 3.3.3 of the DCP, specifically in relation to side views, rear setbacks and view sharing.
You
again,
are over time. Do you need, have you got much further?
I don't have much more. Okay, in relation to the balcony.
Okay, I'll let you have another 30 seconds.
Thank you. So the balcony, as you know, will be largely opaque, particularly with the screenings. The applicants themselves have said they receive no additional amenity from that over having windows, yet it will impact because of the solidness of it on my views. So that if it were to be removed, that would at least go some ways into addressing the loss of views that I have. The heritage, as Catherine mentioned, only required the front setback to be in line with number 1. They have gone further than that. If they were to push the rear closer to the front, they would effectively, by meeting the footprint of number 1, they would effectively lose less than 1 metre of internal living space. They would still be provided with a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom, 2 lounge room, dining, kitchen, study house, much larger than any of the neighbours. And they have not been able to explain in any way, shape or form what amenity they would lose by simply moving the first floor footprint to better align with that of number 1.
All right, thank you. I'll just see if there's any questions. I've got a question just in terms of this issue about the heritage requirement to move it back.
Yeah.
Both you and the previous speaker have said that it's gone further than that. So
That's
what was, in your understanding, of the requirement?
that it match the rear, the first floor setback meet or match that of number 1, but they've actually gone further back than
yeah,
so,
but so the purpose presumably of that requirement, the heritage requirement, was to move it, the actual addition, further from the street.
correct, but
So
only
was
to
it,
meet number 1,
pardon?
and they've gone further than that. That they've actually have a greater setback from the street than number 1.
So the wording of it was move what was previously proposed back to align with where number 1 starts and finishes.
To the best of my knowledge, that's correct.
Yeah, okay, well, we'll need to check that.
Okay.
All right. Any questions from other panel members? No? All right, so for the applicant, we have Mr. Tim Blythe.
Hello, Madam Chair. So my name's Tim Blythe, Director at Urbis, and representing Mr. and Mrs. Horsfield, who are the owners, number 3. Thank you for opportunity to speak. I might just make a couple of opening remarks. Obviously, there's quite a few matters that have been raised by the neighbours, so I'll probably try to spend as much time focusing on those and see if we can address those. Just a couple of things just to sort of kick off. You probably read from the material that our client has been on a difficult journey. This is the second DA that they've lodged. The DA was previously approved for an extension substantially the same as what you are seeing today, but there was it was raised by council that there was a question of its validity in the way that the council processed it. It was not a fault of our clients, but the avoidance of doubt, our client has resubmitted a new DA at their cost. So that DA that was previously approved is still valid. It hasn't been revoked by council. So I think it's just important to note that that DA is still valid and our client would still have the choice to pursue it and satisfy the conditions of it, but has elected for the avoidance of doubt to go back through the process again. So here we are today. I think it's been mentioned previously, our client has worked hard to achieve, notwithstanding what has been said just before, that to achieve a design that is sympathetic to the heritage conservation requirements and the needs and the recommendations of the council's heritage advisors, to also be very faithful to the full regime of planning controls that sit on the site. It's not, it's well within matters like floor space ratio. It's well under the height controls. It complies with DCP setbacks. So just to be clear, it complies with all the numerical requirements that are there, and it is quite somewhat challenging when you pursue a design such as this and then still get the weight of criticism that our client has copped through this. But obviously we are attempting to work through those issues. So if I can just then briefly address the 3 different submissions, if I can.
Yes.
And maybe we can move through these fairly quickly. On the privacy matters raised by Ms. Minogue from 1 Monmouth, I think we are committed to having appropriate window screenings across W3, which is a window that they're concerned about, the north-facing window, which is for the bedroom. We don't believe that, I mean, I think the idea of light spill and the like, which I think was raised by Mr. Hoffman, I think it's the window is perpendicular to the living window of that neighbour's house, so we don't see it as a light spill issue. We think we can come up with appropriate screening that still allows for a high level view out horizontally across to the horizon, achieve light and ventilation through a window in its current location. So we don't support the prospect of relocating it further to the west, which I think Mr. Pericar was, I guess, exploring with a neighbour. So we think that what we submit that W3 can be screened is appropriate in that location. It's a secondary window to a bedroom. By having windows on two faces, it allows for some cross ventilation. When you've got when you've got an upper level addition, having some ability to have some cross flow air is really important. Bear in mind too, if it's because of the low height of this building, this first floor addition, it's going to have a cathedral ceiling, sort of, a lofted ceiling. So the ability to put in other than ceiling fans, unlikely about air conditioner because it's got a lofted ceiling. So the idea of airflow and the like is really important to the amenity of this upper level addition. And that's the sole purpose, to allow a little bit of an aspect out to the northwest, which is available from this location, as well as some good airflow. On the balcony issue, which I think has come up across all three submissions, it was mentioned at the start that it was suggested to be unusable, but it causes major impact. So it's a bit sort of, I think the neighbours are having a bit each way. It's there really principally almost at 2 metres by effectively 1 metre. So it's barely something you can stand on. You can't really sit out there with a table or the like. It's simply an opportunity that open up windows to that master bedroom to allow an easterly aspect or outlook. And it's well set back from the easterly neighbours who haven't raised any further concerns today. So it's actually about trying to create some amenity to that upper level bedroom, allow for some airflow rather than screening it all off, because if there's no balcony, then you've got to screen it. And the idea of the side having the screens up to 1.8 metres on the sides is supported, and obviously a necessity given the neighbouring context. And we support that recommendation. So we believe that we can achieve the concern or address the concerns of the neighbours by having that by having those two sort of side screen elements. I think Evan's shown that montage.
Yeah.
No one could look really could look south or north, and their aspect is very much to the east. So we believe that the privacy issues from the balcony can be addressed.
You are over time, Mr. Blythe, so have you got much more to say? Do you need a further explanation?
I do, if I can. The neighbours have raised a range of issues, so I do think they deserve to be.
How much longer do you think you need?
A couple of minutes, if I can. I think I would just quickly like to capture the other matters.
We've also got your client speaking as well.
I think I can shortcut that. If I can use that time, that would be helpful.
Yes.
You can take my time.
Okay. All right. So on that basis, I'll allow you another 3 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. On the Pebble matter along the side boundary, look, end of the day, if the panel wanted to be concrete, then that's fine. It was met to achieve council's requirements for soft landscaping. It satisfies the DCP. Aggie pipes and the like and drainage would be put into it regardless to achieve or overcome the concerns of the neighbour. So I think those matters can be adequately addressed by condition. And also there was a dilapidation report requirement, which is condition 21. So all those concerns about impact on neighbours can be addressed by condition. On number 5, which is probably the principal one, the key thing there is around the shadowing issues that have been raised. And I think it's just important to quickly clarify Ms. Hoggard at number 5 has a couple. There's in the main dining area or living area at the back of the house where the kitchen is, which you've seen some of the images. There are 2 windows. One of the windows is obviously more impacted than the most northeast facing window. So the northeast facing window from the diagrams that we submitted to the council show that window and obviously the east facing windows would achieve sunlight access in midwinter from 8 till 12 o'clock. The middle window would be affected quite substantially in the midwinter period because of the location of the extension adjacent. I would say you would have to pretty much remove half or more than half of the first floor extension to protect that window. It is in a vulnerable position where it is located. I understand the design of the neighbours, but the area, the room that is in question will still receive sunlight, direct sunlight in winter between 8 and 12. And that's from the shadow diagrams that we submitted. And I can go to clarify that further if that's needed. Again, with the privacy concerns of number 5, again, window 14, which is a study window, we believe can be adequately screened Again, it's to a study, but again, being an upper level window, the idea of it having a screen allows for the ability to open the window, allow some ventilation through it. If it's all fixed, then it makes it much more difficult to get amenity and light into that room. So we believe that's completely consistent with the council's DCP requirements. And then finally, in terms of number 7, for the record, the draft DCP is not relevant to this application. It is not. It's not adopted, to my understanding, and it's not relevant to the application. So, not a matter we submit that the panel should consider. In regards to the 8 metres is a required setback from the rear boundary. We are 11.38, and if you do take a look along the rear boundary setbacks, there's no prevailing rear setback. Number 1 is not the prevailing setback. There are obviously varied setbacks along that area, some which are got greater setbacks than us, some have got less. So it's mixed. We believe we're in the right. We believe we meet the predominant setback, and therefore the rear extension in its location shouldn't be moved. As I said, we've been on a long journey with this application, or second application. The prospect of now redesigning it again raises obviously some very serious concerns for us, given the work and the effort that's gone into getting to where we are today. So I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've just got a quick question. In terms of the balcony, what you said is what you're trying to achieve, whether it was largely just being able to sort of open it up and get ventilation. Wouldn't that be able to be achieved with the Juliet balcony as well?
Look, yes, it would. Look, I think at the end of the day, obviously our client's preference is to have a balcony because to add some amenity to that room, to open the doors, to have some light and air come in. I think at the end of the day, if that is a matter that the panel is very strongly concerned about, it's not the preeminent issue for our client. It's something we think it adds amenity and enjoyment for the room, but it's not. It will not be an entertaining space for an area you can readily use to any other than being able to have that benefit of stepping out onto it. So we don't believe it has an impact. We hear the neighbours' concerns. We think the screening does the job, but it to us that is not. We've got far more bigger concerns than the balcony, if that's clear. Yeah.
Sure. So also in terms of the bit of discussion by the objectors about the heritage requirements, can you just explain what your understanding was in relation to where the upper floor addition, how it should be moved?
Well, my understanding is that the direction from council and the advice that we got from our heritage consultant was that we should set back the first floor so it sits behind the ridge line of the existing dwelling, which what you'll see if you look at the north elevation, for example, in the plans, if you have those at your disposal, you'll see that we've done 2 things. One was reduce the eave height of the addition so it pretty much matches the ridge line of the existing house, and that the eave line sits just behind that existing ridge. That was the advice that and obviously we've hit the roof as well, so it reduces its bulk and its form. That was the advice we got from our heritage consultant, Stephen Davies. And I think that's what we understood the heritage expectations of the council was. So that's why we've cited it where we have.
All right, and one of the objectors mentioned about the DCP actually being adopted on the 11th of November 2022, which required an averaging and that each floor be considered. So when you said it's not...
Doesn't come into effect till the LAPs.
Doesn't come into effect until LAPs examined, in my understanding. Yeah.
Okay. All right, there are my questions. Any other questions from panel members?
No, please.
No, Jason, you've got a question, have you?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So just explain what your screening is for W3 that you're proposing that's not on this plan.
So one of the conditions is that there be screening proposed. And so what I'm saying is that we accept that there will be screening as per the recommended conditions. So it's not on the plan, so I accept that, but we accept that there should be screening to avoidance of doubt for looking down. The only thing I would say, and I should have raised it earlier, so that's condition. So 2B, recommended condition 2B, requires screening to W3, W14 and 15. And so we accept that. The only thing I would request though the panel consider is that it says that the screening should be blades and orientated in a certain direction. Our view is that the DCP allows the discretion to have blades either mounted vertically or horizontally. Our preference is to have horizontal blades, still achieve the same effect of allowing to 1.6 metres to allow horizontal blades designed to avoid looking down, because this is about angling views down into the neighbouring properties. So still allowing horizontal views out towards the horizon. So our preference, a strong preference, would be that support the condition, but equally make the condition read that's consistent with the DCP that allows that optionality, which at the moment the condition doesn't read that way.
Right.
And that allows you to open the windows, yeah.
And of two alternatives in order of preference, I'm not giving you much notice, I know, but of the window you're proposing with screening, with or without a change you're suggesting, or option 2, which is a window in the same position, but the sill height be pushed up to say 1.6 and be clear above that. So push up the sill, that's option 2. And option 3, which is moving the window around 2 metres towards the street so it aligns with the rear of number 1. So of B and C, which is a preference?
Well, C, just so you're aware, if you moved it 2 metres to the west, it would look straight into a blank wall of the neighbouring house. Therefore, it's almost useless as a window, because it would actually just look into a blank wall. So it's not favourable at all.
Depending where the bed is, if your bed's against the wall at the entry wall, then maybe you get a diagonal view out. Right.
Well, the whole idea is that there isn't, obviously there's been talking about views, so there is views obviously towards Bondi Junction.
Right.
That W3 in its location does provide an aspect out towards Bondi Junction. So it's got a benefit of having a horizontal view out. I mean, what I'm recommending or suggesting or submitting to you is that option 1 is still our strongly preferred option.
I understand that, but of option B and C, which you don't like, B would probably be better.
Sounds like B, yes.
Yeah, I understand. And so of the front setback, you're saying that both the council staff, from your understanding and your own heritage advice, was to set it behind the back of the ridge where it starts to step down to the hill.
Yeah, definitely.
Looking at your design, I could see there'd be some benefit in pushing it forward around 2 metres. Then you'd have the entry to upstairs straight off the front door entry, and you'd probably move your bathroom that's currently there under the
Don't
stairs.
want to redesign.
Right.
Well,
look,
we've gone on the advice that we've gone on.
Sorry, just one person speaking at a time. So Jason, you're asking a question.
Sorry, I was just look, apart from your compliance argument, to understand, you can also understand, due to overshadowing, some outlook and views that neighbours are concerned about how far it extends rearwards, and is there opportunity to move it forward? So I guess I'm just trying to understand your position on it.
No, I've set the condition. The question is very fair. I think where we've come from is that we believe that the front setback has been we've been led to in terms of the advice, the expert advice. So it's obviously designed to be sympathetic to that streetscape. To be clear, that moving the building 1 or 2 metres further to the west does not fundamentally solve the neighbours' shadowing concerns. I would say that to achieve what they suggest, well, I'm saying that the rear window, the rear northeast window of the neighbouring properties to the south still receives morning sunlight from 8 till 12. So that room still gets direct sunlight in midwinter. If you want to preserve what there is today, you'd have to remove at least half or more of the extension proper. So moving it 1 or 2 metres will not make a substantive difference.
Yeah, but the neighbour today is saying they're not saying that you should reduce it. They're saying move it forward. I'm just asking.
Yeah, but I'm saying what's the cost? The cost of moving it forward is that we run into potentially heritage issues in terms of the integrity of the design as recommended. And secondly, we don't achieve what is the benefit achieved. It's a minor. To my mind, the shadowing impact it's a minor improvement. You got to remember the eave height of our extension at first floor level is only about I think it was about 900 millimetres higher than the eave height of the neighbouring single story house. So it's not like it's a 2-story building set up against a a smaller single story because of the level change and because of the way that we've really tried to push the floor ceiling down and even the ground floor ceiling down. The height differential is not that great. So even at 12 o'clock in midwinter, you are still getting even the top of the, you're still getting sun coming across the top of that building and hitting the top of that of the neighbouring house. So it's not like it's not a typical 1 to 2 story kind of interface. This is,
I think I understand your position. It's a good heritage outcome. You don't want to move it forward.
Yeah, and
aren't doing it. That's your
Jason, can I just add one thing? This was the key issue for the original DA, which, you know, is still valid at the moment. We did amend the plans because the key issue was about setting back the building from a heritage point of view behind the original roof line. So we started off there, we amended the plans, and the current consent we have addressed that issue, and it was the number one issue raised by council as well as the neighbours at that time in terms of heritage conservation. So, you know, we've gone around in roundabouts then over 2 years, and I just think that we did not have support at that point in time from council, and it was very clear to get that support we needed to set it back behind the original roof line.
All right, and my last question is just about the side pebbles, because I'm having a bit of difficulty understanding or conceptualising this, because what I'm hearing is that probably the water's hitting a sandstone shelf and then going through to the neighbour, and if it's not doing that, it's because it's hitting a concrete path. And the proposal is to remove a concrete path to pebbles. It'll presumably absorb a bit more water, but it would also, if there is a sandstone shelf behind it, below it, sorry, hit that sandstone shelf like everyone else on a ridge and then go downstream as water does. I'm just trying to understand what your drainage, you did mention an ag pipe and stormwater disposal. So either existing or in your proposed solution, are you saying that there's a stormwater ag pipe that disperses surface water to over the front to an OSD or to the street? Because I would have thought the levels would be a bit problematic.
I don't think there's any OSD. There's a slight fall towards the street. So I guess what I was saying is that in obviously pulling up the concrete and the like, you would find a way to sort of try to get a natural line of drainage down towards the street.
But the only way that would work is if you had some sort of, if you took all the concrete, went down to the sandstone shelf, put in a ag pipe and a line, you know what I mean? Like it's going to be difficult.
We're happy for it.
Well,
we're happy for it to stay concrete.
If that's
got concrete next door. It was just considered to be a better solution.
I'm just wondering if the current situation doesn't move that surface water to the street, then it's actually worse having it at concrete because it's higher up and it's just going to mean the water drains down from a higher position. That would by gravel and going into the ground and hitting wherever the rock shelf is.
Yeah.
Seems like the proposed solution would be better provided there's not a surface drainage to the street, and it doesn't sound like there is, otherwise there wouldn't be the drainage problems next door.
Yeah, well, if we need to provide a way to provide a solution to it through a condition, then I would invite that. Obviously, it's not a matter that's been the focus of the DA, but it's something that if it's a concern, we can try to address.
And whether it is, I mean, we've never seen it with water there. I mean, obviously, it's been a very wet year, but this has never been raised as an issue with our neighbour previously, but you know.
Okay, no more questions for me.
All right, thank you. So that then
no more questions.
All right. I can see you've got your hand up, Mr. Klass, but the procedure is we hear from the objectors first, and then we hear from the applicant, and it's not a process of toing and froing. So, so I can't. You've been muted, so no, I'm not allowing any further discussion about it. So that concludes the public meeting. So the public meeting will be closed at 2:15. And I said in my opening, the panel will now go into closed session to consider all the submissions, both oral and written, and the information before us, and make our decisions. And those decisions and the reasons for our decisions will be posted on Council's website as soon as possible. So thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you.